Okay, now we've already been through the first four of Abraham's 10 tests that God gave him in order to be totally connected to the creator of the universe. And this he passed down, at least the merit of this, he passed down to the Jewish people for all generations. So we've been through, first of all, that we mentioned that Abraham was thrown into a fiery furnace. That was number one, that God told him to leave where he was, leave everything that he had, and go to unknown destination. This is number two, that's Lech Lecha. And the third one is that Abraham finally does get to the promised land, and there's a famine there, and he has to leave and go down to Egypt. That's number three. And then when he gets down to Egypt, as his wife gets kidnapped, that's number four. Now we're briefly going to talk about this, number five. Number five is the war. It seems that Abraham wasn't just this pristine sort of religious figure talking to God, but it was a pretty formidable warrior. Because there's this big war. The Torah tells us about this big war. Let's go through it quickly. And there are four kings that make war against five kings. The kings were, first of all, they were in prison. Anyway, it was in the days of Amraphel, the king of Shinar, Arioch, the king of Elasar, Kedar Laomer, the king of Elam, and Tidal, the king of Goyim. That's the name of the places. So you have Amraphel, Arioch, Elasar, and Tidal, four kings. And they made a war against five kings. Bera, the king of Sodom, Birsha, the king of Amorah. You can already see that these fields have terrible names. Bera means he's in Ra, means evil. Russia means he's a sinner. The king of Amorah. Shinav, the king of Admah. Shemever, the king of Zvuyim. And Soar, Melech Bela, the king of Bela was Soar. What are these places who know? Anyway, they made up this big war, right? And it ended up that the five lost, right? They joined together in a place called Emek Hasidim, and which is near the Salt Sea, and they served this Kedar Laomer for 12 years, and on the 13th year they made a rebellion, and on the 14th year after they made the rebellion, so Kedar Laomer came, and the kings with him, and he smote them in a place called Ashtros Kanaim, and etc. and etc. In any case, they won. The four kings beat the five kings. Right, here was the war. The king of Sodom, Amorah, Admah, Zvoyim, Bela, the king of Bela with Soar. They made a war in this place called Emek Hasidim. Kedar Laomer was this. It just repeats over these people, right? So it says four kings against the five. This place, Emek Hasidim, you could make a movie about this thing. Anyway, it was filled with all sorts of mud, and the four kings won. Vayiplu Shama v'nisharim ara yasu. The king of Sodom and Amorah, they ran away. Now, if you remember before, Lot went to live in this place called Sodom. He went to live there, and even though it was filled with evil people, but he went to live there. So now he's on the losing side, right? So the four kings who won, and they took all of the properties of Sodom and Amorah and all their food, and they left. And they took Lot and all of his properties. And who was Lot? Lot, of course, was the son of the brother of Avram, Haran, the brother of Avram that died early. Lot was his brother. So they left. Now, Lot was a pretty bad guy also. Lot was not, he was as a Russian. That's why he wanted to go and live in Sodom, because they were all evil people. but they weren't as evil as he was. So he felt really, good over there. In any case, now he is taken prisoner. Vayavo palit. Someone escaped, and he told Abraham, who is this person who escaped? Who escaped? Escaped where? And he told Abraham. So it says the one who escaped, this is Og, the king of Bashan, that he lived, Og, he escaped from the war. That's what it says, Og, only Og remained. That's one explanation, but there's another explanation. A Midrash Bereshit says it was Og, and he didn't escape from the war. Maybe escaped from the war also, but he escaped from the flood. The flood killed everybody in the world, all the animals, except for Og. Og says he held on to Noah's Ark. He held on for a year, which is a pretty amazing accomplishment. And he was also a big giant. And we'll see that, so he must have been pretty old, Og. He was at least, 400 years old. The flood was about 400 years after, Abraham was about 400 years after the flood. And we find out that Moshe, he killed Og. So Moshe lived about 400 years after Avram. So Og was, bare minimum 800 years old. And I mean, he must have been some age when he was the king. In any case, that's not important. He came and he told Abraham what was going on, that Lot was taken prisoner. And here we call Abraham is called Avram Ivri. He told Avram Ivri. Ivri, and now we translate as Hebrew, but Ivri means the other side. Here we have, why is he called the Ivri? Where do we get this name from? Shubo mi Avra Nar, because he came from the other side of the river. And some people say that no, what it means is that Abraham was on one side of the world and the whole world was against him. And it says that Og made a covenant together with Abraham, and that he would tell him, anyway, maybe he did it before, maybe he did it afterwards, however it was, he told them. So Avram said, okay, I got to go into action. My relative is in prison. And when Avram heard that his nephew was in imprisoned, so he armed, or here it says that he encouraged all of his pupils, and all the people in his house. They were all together. How many people? 318 men. He, together with 318 men, and they pursued 4 armies. The year before in Dan, and he ran until this place called Dan. Now, one opinion says that it was not 318 people, but it was, Rabbeinu say that this was Eliezer. אני לא יכול. לא. סליחה, אני אעבור לילדים שנייה. Okay, here we go. Yes. So some people say that who was this? This was just one person. It wasn't 318 people. It was only one person. Who was it? Eliezer. But it says it was 318. How did they get Eliezer? So that this is the gematria of Eliezer. If you take all the numbers of his name, Eliezer, Aleph is 1, Lamed is 30, etc. It comes out that the Torah was concealing from us that it was only one person. Abraham went and fought single-handedly, double-handedly against 4 whole armies. And these armies finished defeating 5 armies. So he ran over to a place called Dun. And there he weak. It was too much. He couldn't. So that's why, and then in the future, in Dun, the Jewish people are going to, why did he get weak over there? Because after King Solomon died, King Solomon, right, the first temple, we're talking about, what is it, from Abraham, like 800 years later, something like that, when they built the first temple. So King Solomon builds the first temple and he dies. and his son was not such a good king, and he split the kingdom. And the Yeravam ben Nevat took 10 tribes to the north, and he built golden calves, 2 golden calves. It comes out Jews like idolatry. What are you going to do? And he built 2 golden calves, and the Jewish people served them. One of those golden calves he put in Dan. One is Dan, and the other one was in Bethel. Okay, so anyway, Abraham goes, Vayechalek alayam alayla, and Abraham divided the night. And Rashi said, what did he do this? That Abraham divided his forces, which wasn't very difficult. There was only 2 people. And like people that run after somebody else, so they split up. One went to this way and one went to the other way. They waited till the nighttime in order to run after him. And I read, someone told me that there's a midrash, I didn't see this midrash, that from here, the Jews are good night fighters. From here, the Jews are the best night. And someone told me in the army that it's true, that the Arabs hate to fight at night. That, anyway, I don't know if that's true or not. But anyway, so they said, wait until the night, and the Jews are really good at fighting in the night. Is it true? Is it not true? I don't know. That's what I was told. They said the Jews are good night fighters, and they got it from Abraham. In any case, some people say, no, it divided the night, that the first half of the night, Chatzos Rishon, was a miracle made for Abraham, that he defeated all these kings. And the second half of the night, this was divided, this waited for the Jewish people to go, Laila Shel Mitzrayim, for the Jewish people to get, for God to smite the firstborn, and they left Egypt. It says that, for leave Egypt. Ad Chova, to a place called Chova, which is to the left of a place called Damascus. It says Rashi, there is no such place. And this place Dan is called Chova because of the, Chova means a debt, because of the idolatry that was going to be put up there. So it was a place that caused a debt to the Jewish people. Okay, anyway, so Abraham wins, right? He wins, and he ran after the 4 kings. He runs after these 4 armies, and he pursues them until this place called Chova, this place called Dan. Anyway, Abraham gets everything back, and also Lot, his brother. It wasn't his brother, it was the son of his brother, and he gave all of it, and all the women and all the people. And the king of Sodom, who he also saved from these people, came out, and he said to Abraham, we'll see, we haven't got time to learn all this, but essentially the king of Sodom said, listen, I was considering making a comeback, and you sort of beat me to it, so let's divide up. Let's divide up everything. 10 li a nefesh, he says, so he came, Melech Sodom came back, and also Malki Tzedek. Who is Malki Tzedek? The king of Shalem. He came out and gave them wine, and etc. And he blessed them and said, blessed Avram, that is the owner of heaven. Blessed is Abraham to the upper God who owns the heavens and the earth. And blessed is God who has put all of your enemies into your hands. And then the king of Sodom comes out and he says, just give me all the people and you can take all the money. And Abraham says, I only came to save Lot. I'm not going to take anything from you. I swore to God, that who owns the heavens and the earth, that I'm not even going to take a shoelace from you. If from a string or a shoelace or a thread, I'm not going to take from you, because God swore to me that he was going to make me rich. That's what it says. If you want to give him a reward even if you want to give him a reward, not from the spoils that I took, but from your treasure houses, I'm not going to take it. Why? Because God, he promised me that he's going to make me rich. I don't want to touch your money. Like it says, God swore that he was going to bless me, which this is a lesson to the Jewish people also, not to take dishonest money. Who, by the way, is this Malki Tzedek person that came out and blessed Abraham? So it says, Malki Tzedek, says Rashi, the Midrash Haggadah says this is Shem. This is one of the sons of Noah. and he brought him bread and wine. This is what we do to people that came back from war because they're all tired. And he showed him, also Shem showed him that he hasn't got any bad feelings to Abraham, because Abraham, some of these 5 kings were his direct relatives. This also hints at the bread and the wine that he brought out, bread and wine. This hints at the bread offerings. They're called menachos, the bread offerings and the wine offerings that are going to be sacrificed with every sacrifice. Every sacrifice they had to bring lechem and wine. Okay. With the sacrifices, oil and wine are brought with everyone, but and some of them are brought also bread offerings, but it's only brought in the holy temple. So he blessed them. All right, now here we get another exciting thing. We'll see how much time we have. All right, so now we have finished the 5th test. Abraham fought a big battle, and he killed a lot of people. All right, killed a lot of people. Let's go. Here we go. Okay, achar devarim elu. And so it was after this. After what? After the big war. Achar means immediately. Let's look at Rashi. Achar, it says, any place where it says achar, after, it means very close proximity in time. If it says acharei devarim elu, it means a long time afterwards. So here it says achar devarim elu means immediately after. Immediately after what? Immediately after that was made a big miracle for Abraham, and he killed all these kings, and now Abraham was worried. Maybe he used up all of his merits. Maybe I already received all my reward for all the good things I've done for God, that I was willing to be thrown into a fiery furnace and leave everything that I had, come to the land of Israel, and when there was a famine, I didn't have any questions about God. And Sarah was taken prisoner. I wasn't worried. I was sure that God would help me. And maybe now I've eaten up all of my merits that I have. Therefore, he said, Lo amakom, God, amakom is the name for God. Therefore, God told him, Al tira Abram, don't be afraid. Anochi magin lach, I will protect you from any punishment. Shalote enesh al call otan nafasha sahagta. You won't get punished for all the people that you killed. And that what you worry about receiving a reward, not only won't you get punished, but you're going to get a big reward also. And here the Sforno says, don't worry, that maybe these kings, they probably had relatives. And they maybe had a lot of relatives. I mean, each one of them probably had a lot of wives. Says, don't worry about, and they had agreements, they had alliances, right? You ever read what happened in World War I? The whole thing was just these crazy alliances that everybody had. So it started out with nothing, and then there was this whole massive war that millions, tens of millions of people were killed. So I said, don't worry about it, Abraham, that that there's going to be some sort of alliances, or someone will take vengeance for the kings, these 4 kings that you just defeated, because you're going to get a big, big reward. You're going to get an eternal reward. Okay, so we're going to see what's going on. Abraham said, what are you going to give to me? I don't even have any children. I'm going ariri. Ariri means childless. And the Ben Meshach, the one who's controlling my house, the big person in my house, is not like my sons are ruling the house, is domestic Eliezer. This Eliezer is my servant. That's what he wants. And God said, you didn't give me any children. So the only one, maybe this Eliezer, he's going to inherit me. I mean, he's the only one that's really faithful to me in this whole business. Says, God spoke, and he said, no, this Eliezer is not going to inherit you, but only someone that's going to come from your loins. He is going to be your biological son, is going to be the one that's going to inherit from you. And of course, after that, Abraham is going to have Yishmael. He's going to have Ishmael, is born 13 years before Yitzchak. So Abraham says, wow, it's really good. You know, God promised me he's Ishmael. And God's going to say, no, not Ishmael. He's not going to be the one. Yitzchak is going to be the one. We'll see. Anyway, so here's Abraham. Now, Abraham already is an old man. He's 99 years old. And his wife is 89 years old. And it's pretty improbable they're going to have any children. So God's promised them, but Abraham has already relegated himself. That doesn't seem, that the promise is going to come out in any sort of a normal way. So God says, you don't have any children. Watch this. But he took him outside. He said, look at the heavens. Can you count the stars? Now, I don't know if you've ever tried this. Try some night going out. And if you live in any sort of a semi-normal place, not in a big city, go out and start to count the stars, right? See, it's not that hard. You go out and you count the stars, and you count, 1, 2, 3, 4, count. But as you're looking up, so your eyes adjust a little bit more to the darkness, and all of a sudden you notice, there's a couple more stars I didn't count. And then as you count those stars, your eyes adjust more until finally, after like 4 or 5 minutes, the whole sky is just packed with stars. Right? It's really quite amazing. If you go out into a place like in the desert or someplace that's really clear, you can see them automatically, immediately, and you see that there's more than packed. It's like super packed. And so it says, count the stars. If you're able to count the stars, and so will be your seed. Says Rashi, according to the simple meaning, he's just telling them, look at the stars and count the stars. But the Midrash says, no, you, Abraham, are a big expert in astrology. Look up at the stars, at your mazel, at your zodiac. According to your charts and everything, like you're never going to be able to have any children. Impossible. And not only that, physically, he couldn't have any children. That's all. He was too old. God said, you're right. Avram will not have any children, but Avraham will have a son. And when did he get called Avraham? When he had the circumcision. And also Sarai, your wife Sarai, she can't give birth. It says she didn't even have a womb. In lo beit valad, it says she can't. But Sarah will be able to give birth. So God is going to change both of their names. And I will call you a different name, and your whole mazal, your whole luck, or whatever, your whole zodiac is going to change. That's number one. So in other words, I took you outside of the stars. According to another explanation is that God took him outside of the universe. Lifted him above the stars. Look, when he says habit, what is this? Habit usually means you're standing in a high place and you look down. So God's saying, look down at the stars. He brought him up above the stars. And it says, Vayamin B'Hashem, and says, your children are going to be like the stars of the sky. Of course, up to now, I don't think the number of Jewish people was above the stars of the sky. So there's a lot of different explanations. One of them is that the raising of the dead. Another one is that Jewish people are like the stars of the sky because they illuminate the darkness. Remember, we learned in Yom Yom just a couple of days ago. He believed in God, and God considered it for him to be tzedakah. He considered it to be righteousness, and God considered to Abraham to be a merit on this faith that he believed in him. Another one is God did not ask him for a sign for the child, but for children. Lo shali, I don't want any sign. I just want to know what merit, what do I have to do in order to, and by what merit am I going to have all these children? Right? So God said, B'zechut hakorbanot, in the merit, there's going to be sacrifice. The sacrifices you already made, the physical animal sacrifices that you made, and the sacrifices that you're going to make. Now here, listen to these sacrifices. Listen, this is really knockout story here. God said, I am God. God said to him, I am God. I took you out of this place called Ur Kasdim, and I am giving you this land for an inheritance. And now Abraham said, okay, when you promised me children, I had no questions. And now you're telling me you're going to give this land, I got a question. How am I going to know for sure that this is really going to happen? That I'm going to inherit the land? And that's what it says. God says you're going to do because your children are going to have the holy temple and they're going to make sacrifices. That's what Rashi already answered over here. So he said, okay, God says, okay, Abraham, listen to this. Ready? Abraham says, I'm ready, God. Whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do it. This here is going to be the sixth test. God said to him, take for me a calf, a young cow, right? Mishuleshes, 3 calves. That's what he says. Rashi, Shlosh agalim, 3 calves. This hints at 3 oxes that are brought in the Holy Temple. The ox of Yom Kippur, the ox, which is a helam davar, if the king or whatever makes a mistake, or if the Sanhedrin makes a mistake, they have to bring this. And shel tzibur, and if the judges, they tell the congregation to do something and they make a mistake, and the congregation does it. And the agla arufa is the calf, the calf that you break its neck if there's a dead person between 2 towns. So this hints at 3 different types of calves that are brought. The egla is mishuleshes, 3 goats. This hints at the goat, which is made inside of the Yom Kippur, the goats of the Musafim, and the goat, which is of a single person. A single person who does a sin brings also a goat. And an ayel mishulash is a ram, 3 rams, and a tor, and a pigeon, the gozel, and another type of a tor. A tor is a ben Yonah, uben Yonah. A tor is usually older, and a gozel is younger. A tor, I think, is more than 1 year. I have to look it up. And a gozel is less than 1 year. Anyway, 2 different birds. Ready? We'll have to do this a little bit quickly. Take all of these, says God. V'yavater otam betavach. Split them in 2. V'yitain ish bitro likrat re'ehu. And take each half and put it facing the other one. And now you're going to see God, so to speak, we're going to see, and Abraham passed through these 2. That's going to be a covenant. So you have to take these 3 calves, 3 goats, 3 rams, slaughter them, cut them into 2, half, and split them down the middle. Put one side here, one side here, one side here, but the bird don't split into 2. A tzipur lo batar, but the bird don't. Okay, Rashi is going to say that these different animals, they represent like the non-Jews, and the bird is the Jewish people. She said almost the non-Jews, they are like cows and rams and goats. Like it says, Savuni Parim Rabim in Tehillim, and Ayel Reisi Bal Karnaim, also in Daniel. He saw this big vision of a ram and a ram's head, and etc. And it also says a seir, a goat, that refers to the king of Greece. The Jewish people, they're compared to the dove, to the pigeon. Like it says, Yonasi b'chag be'asel, it says in the Song of Songs. Therefore, you cut all these others. This hints at all the other nations, they eventually will be dissipated. All of them will be dissolved, but the Jewish people will always be existing forever, which we see pretty clearly. I mean, there's not too many Romans wandering around, Babylonians, right? Not too Babylonians and Greeks. Greeks over there. What are they? They have a trouble just getting their economy together. They used to conquer the whole world. Okay, so he split these 3 together, and he cut them in half, and the tzipur he didn't cut, and there came down an ayat, like a hawk, on these pieces, and Avram drove it away. Just in a show, this is pretty strange. And this is going to see Lashon Neshiva. This hints at that King David is like the hawk, David Bishai, and he's going to come and try to defeat all of our enemies, but God will not allow him to until the Melech HaMashiach comes, and Melech HaMashiach will do away with all our enemies. Hopefully by then there won't be any enemies, but who knows what's going to be. Anyway, the sun set, a slumber fell on Abraham, and there was an awesome darkness that fell on him. This awesome darkness is a hint at the exiles and the darkness that are going to befall the Jewish people. Scary. And God said to Abraham, you should know that you are going to be strangers in a land that's not yours. and you are going to serve them. And the inosam, lolam, the avadum the inosam, and this nation, they will torture you 400 years. It says these 400 years, the Jews, in fact, were only in Egypt for 210 years. And this is the 400 years that's counting from the birth of Yitzchak. Mishnolad Yitzchak. When Yitzchak was born until they got out of Egypt, that was 400 years. And he explains how it is, exactly how it was. And also, but the nation that is going to make you suffer, I'm going to judge them. And afterwards, you're going to go out with a big reward. The Jewish people went out from Egypt with all the riches of Egypt. It said all the riches of Egypt. They left with all the riches. And now you are going to go to your forefathers in shalom, with peace, and you will be buried b'seva tova at a good old age. It says with your fathers, Abraham's fathers were idolaters. This teaches you that Terach, it must be that Terach did tshuva, he repented, and you will be buried in a good old age. He's telling them that he's going to have a son, Yishmael, who's going to be pretty bad, but he's also going to do tshuva in his lifetime. And he's not going to see Esav, because it says that Abraham died 5 years early, so he would not see Esav, his grandson, going into doing all these evil things. And the third generation is going to come back here, come back to Israel, because the sin of the Amori is not going to be tough. The Jewish people are going to be slaves in Egypt for these 4 generations, and eventually they're going to come back to Israel. God promised them. Okay, and the sun set, and there was a halata, another type of it's a halata, means a deep darkness, and there all of a sudden he saw a furnace, a flaming furnace, and a tongue of fire that came between these 2 pieces that he put on the side. What's this talking about? This is that all of the nations that serve idols are going to fall into hell, and that Abraham passed between the pieces with the Shekhinah. This is just a grammar. Halata haya behine tanu rosh tevis behepech valata. So the first day was of tohu sheher alo agalias shedomim letohu. Tohu taf hey to hu taf hey vav tohu. He says going to show tohu. He says with extra vav. To hu taf vav to hu. Tohu means confusion, to show you all of the exiles that the Jewish people are going to be in, and they will be like total confusion. All of the Jews were exiled from all these lands, and the non-Jews tortured them and killed them. On that day, Abraham made a covenant with God, saying, and God said, to your seed, I am going to give this land from the river of Egypt, the Nile River, until the river of Pras, until Pras. So in other words, God promised him he was going to give him until the middle of Persia, the middle of Iran. And here are the nations. Ready, count them. 10 nations. The first 3 didn't give it to him yet. Keni, Kenizi, and Kadmoni. Those are the first 3. We'll go back to this. Chiti is 4, Perizi 5, Rephoim is 6, Hamori 7, Kanani 8, Girgashi 9, and Yebusi is 10. Hey, 10 says Rashi, 10 nations there are here. But in fact, God only gave the Jews 7. And the 3, which are Edom, Moab, and Ammon, that's the Keni and the Kenizia and Kadmoni. Edom, Moab, and Ammon, that's the Keni and the Kenizia and the Kadmoni. They will be given to the Jews in the future by Mashiach. Like it says, Edom or Moab, Mishloach Yadam or Bnei Ammon Mishamam. It says that the 3 things that the Mashiach will, one of the things Mashiach will do, we talked about that today, is that he was going to give the Jewish people all 10 nations, the 3 extra ones that God promised to Abraham, and only the Mashiach will complete the work of Abraham. So we have this amazing, bizarre story of God making this covenant and with Abraham between these pieces and these different animals, which are hinting at the sacrifices that are going to be made in the temple, and the consequent inheritance of the land of Israel to all of his children. So anybody that ever questions you, what right have the Jews got to Egypt, to Israel, just show them this, what it says over there. Of course, this is very important to know who a Jew is. A person can say, oh, I have no doubt, here it is. But what is a Jew? Anybody who says, he's a Jew. Just say, I'm Jewish, buy a little chai or something, put it on a chain, put it on your neck. You're a Jew. That's it. You don't need any more than that. Is that so? Definitely not. That's what the Torah is here to define things. Just like God defined everything, he puts your eyes in your head. He doesn't put your eyes in your legs. Why not? Why doesn't God make 5 eyes? And because that's the way God decided. The same thing God decided. There's a difference between Kodesh and Chol, between the Jews and the non-Jews. Now they want to say there's no difference between a man and a woman, between night and day, between Shabbos and it's not so. And here God clearly defined who is a Jew, the descendants of Abraham, or those people who convert, according to the Jewish law. According to Jewish law, not according to somebody's whims or whimsies. According to Jewish law, that's a Jew. But if you do, then you have a right to these lands, to the 7 lands. And now that's the covenant God made with the land. And now we're going to have the birth of Yitzchak. The birth of Yitzchak. Abraham is going to circumcise himself. We're going to have the birth of Yitzchak. That we're going to talk about tomorrow. Have a good day with Mashiach now. Thank you very much. God bless you all.